In this example, you're going to learn how to push changes from a workflow definition to a instance that is based on that definition, where the instance is waiting. So for example, let's say you design a workflow and you create an instance and you're running that workflow, but then you realize you needed to make changes to that workflow definition and push those changes to the running workflow. So let's go ahead and create an example of this. So first, let's create a new definition, and let's call this push changes example. And what we're going to do is we're going to add a task step. So let's call it task 1. So we're going to add this task step and configure it. So let's call it task 1 approval. And I'm going to assign myself to this task. And let's give the task description as task 1 approval. And let's go ahead and save the workflow definition. Let's create an instance of this workflow definition. Let's call it create instance, generate, and create and execute. Now, if we go back to our workflow instances, you will see that this particular instance is executing right now in a sleeping state. And if I render it, you can see it's waiting on this task 1 step. So what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and add another task step to this particular definition. So I'm just going to go ahead and duplicate this. And let's call this task 2 approval. And save this. And we're going to save the definition also. And let's go in and leave the workflow designer. If we go back and look at our workflow instance and render it, you can see that the new change that we made hasn't reflected over on this particular workflow instance. So now what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and make that happen. We're going to go in here and we're going to go to and say update design. At this point, it's going to ask you, do you wish to update the design of the instance from the definition? You're going to go ahead and say OK. And it was updated successfully. And now if we render this particular workflow instance, you will see that the second task is now there in this particular workflow. And we can still go and complete this task, and you will see it will go to the second one. So let's go ahead and complete that task. I'm just going to take a shortcut here and go to my task directly. And here's my task 1. I'm going to complete this task. And you can see immediately task 2 came to my list. And if I go and render that workflow instance, you can see that we are waiting on task 2. This is a very advanced feature for any workflow BPM product, where you might design a workflow, and while instances are running, you can push changes from the design into those running workflows or waiting workflow instances.